Hello, 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 hello. Welcome yourselves to an episode today of Seek Truth, Speak Truth, where I am moderating a debate between Bullet Bill and BB. There's been a bit of a back and forth between the two for a while, so I'm really glad to finally, they've both nailed themselves down to a date and time, and we are going to debate main topic COVID. May deviate a little bit, but the main topic was the response to COVID necessary, basically. We're going to obviously bring on Bullet Bill and BB. I'll just outline what we're going to go through. Excuse me. So each person's going to introduce each other, 2 or 3 minutes, state their case, and then we're going to have a 10 to 15 minute presentation from each debater, and then basically go into a back and forth running off those presentations, 30 to 40 minutes, as long as it goes, basically. Obviously, we realise it's a beautiful day out there, so if you can give us an hour and a half of your time, it would be amazing. And then if we do have questions from the chat, we'll read them out at the end. As Mr. 42 says here, it's between BB and BB, but we should bring on Bullet Bill and BB. So Bullet Bill adding to the stream and BB. Right, let me just change something here. That's better. Right, Bullet Bill, how are you, mate?
Good morning. Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad this has happened. Because BB's been talking about this for a while, and for a while I thought it's going to be another one of those where, it just keeps on. People keep talking about it happening, but it doesn't end up happening. So yeah, we're here and we're doing it. So that's really, really good. I'm glad.
Yeah, that is cool. BB, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yep, very well, mate. Very well indeed. So really glad we finally got this together. So I'll just sort of re-go through it again, just to make sure you guys both heard. So we're going to do a 2 or 3 minute introduction for both of you, literally, who you are, why you're here, and state your claim. And then we're going to do a 10 to 15 minute presentation. You can share your screen as well if you have anything you want to share at the same time. And then, like a 30 to 40 minute back and forth, running off, however you want it to go. I'm considering to do like a coin toss, basically, just to see who kind of would go first. I think that's fair. BB, would you be able to call heads or tails, please?
Look, no need for that. Whoever wants to go first can go. Doesn't.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I agree. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. I'll go first.
Okay, you want to go first, Bill? Okay, mate. Yep. So let's just get into it. Mr. 42, thank you very much. A few pennies for your good work and efforts. Thank you. If anybody does super chat whilst people are talking, I'm not going to, cut them off during their presentations or anything. Obviously, they're massively appreciated. But if you do, I'll take a note of them and read them out, in between or something, obviously. But yeah, so Bullet Bill, mate, you've got 2 to 3 minutes for introduction and to state your claim.
Yep. Okay. Hi, I'm Bullet Bill. I'm not really a major content creator or debunker. Really, I'm just a part of the community. I enjoy conspiracy theories in that I find them quite fascinating, the sort of things that people can believe. But I'm a very much a science guy. I have a degree in biology, and I think that it's very, very important for us to pay attention to tested, trustworthy sources in science and what the data shows. I think that's important above all else. My position will be that the lockdown measures that several countries have implemented have been successful and necessary in reducing the COVID deaths and the spread of COVID-19, as well as other measures such as social distancing, the use of vaccines, etc. And that's pretty much it. I don't have much else to say.
Okay, yeah, not a problem at all. Like I say, these times are guidelines anyway. Really, it's more a maximum than a minimum. BB, would you like to state your case, please?
Yes. So basically, my argument is the opposite of what the official narrative is, that we must have lockdowns and masks and all these other measures. Possibly some measures can be okay, but definitely not the masks and not the lockdowns. I think they actually cause more harm than good, and the actual medical establishment's goals are to avoid causing harm. So when this all occurred, to the surprise of many people around the world, including many doctors and scientists, it has caused a lot of problems throughout the world, including what they call success stories like Australia. Australia is not a success story. It's actually in lockdown. There are parts of it in lockdown right as we speak, and have been in lockdown for a long time. So there's no success stories at the moment. Going back to Sweden, UK, which I think is still in lockdown or coming out of lockdown. It's hard to keep track of every country, but has more deaths per capita than Sweden. So just want to think about that for a sec. You can say density and all these other things, but at the end of the day, UK has significantly more deaths, according to the statistics, than Sweden. So that's a very important point, and that's what helped me change my mind after all of this came to settle down, and it's been ongoing. And
Maybe,
similar, yeah.
do you want to maybe like leave this bit to the intro, and then you can...
Okay, and that's it.
Yeah,
Okay,
I was then
want
going to say, buddy.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good, you've sort of stated your position quite well there. So, yeah, I mean, I think now really, obviously, we'll go to, say, the presentation that you'll both have. So up to 10 minutes, BulletBill, well, up to 15 really, but however long you want, buddy. Do you want me to share this? Do you need to share the screen or anything, or?
I will do. Just give me a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a stopwatch just for me, so that I can, tell, so that I'm not, taking the piss or what have you. Yeah, right. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen for most of this. I think just because it will be useful. And yeah, so as you can see, very, very high IQ research here with the number of tabs I currently have open. So in terms of how lockdown has affected deaths and the spread of this disease, I'm going to first look at the data for a few countries. To look at this data, I'm going to look at the World Health Organization, which has done a very, very good job of recording the deaths and the cases of the virus. And it does it not only worldwide, but by country, which is really good. So let's look at one country, for example, let's say France. Here we have two graphs. You can see very clearly, this is the number of confirmed cases of COVID, right from the beginning of the pandemic, which was around February of last year, as I understand. And we also have the deaths here, and obviously they match up roughly as you would expect. Now, if we have a look at the key dates for France's response to coronavirus, we can look at the dates of the first lockdown. So for the first lockdown, I think that was around the 16th of March when France began their full lockdown. And given there's a little bit of a delay here, the cases do initially go up, but after that, the cases drop and the deaths follow that. You can see that very clearly on this graph. If we have a look at the date of the second lockdown, which was, I believe, here we go. So 30th of October or 28th. I think he announced it on 28th. That actually happened on the 30th of October. Again, if we look at the graph and we find where the 30th of October is, again, we can see a sharp drop in the number of coronavirus cases, and also following that, a sharp drop in the number of deaths. We can look at another country. So if I go closer to home, and look at the UK. And if you check the dates for when these lockdowns happen, after every implementation of a lockdown, which includes closures of schools, of public places, of large gatherings, sports venues, things like that, every time these lockdowns were instated, you could very, very clearly see in the data a drop in the number of cases and in the number of deaths. Now, Sweden, I'm going to leave Sweden because for the time being, because I know BB will have something to say about Sweden. We can look. Actually, do I mention Sweden now? Let me see. Sorry, bear with me. Yeah, actually, no. I'll talk about Sweden a little bit now. So I know BB will like to mention Sweden because Sweden is what a lot of people think have bucked the trend. A lot of people tend to think that Sweden, oh, they haven't had any lockdown measures, and look at Sweden, they've been completely fine. So my counter to that is no, Sweden is not fine. Sweden has incurred quite a lot of coronavirus deaths. Compared to the UK, much lower, but the UK has been one of the worst performing countries in the entire globe in terms of dealing with the pandemic. If we compare Sweden to the rest of Scandinavia, then that paints a pretty grim picture. Sweden has, to this date, around 14,000 deaths from coronavirus. We compare that to Norway, its neighbor, 785 deaths. So that is less than 10 times the number of deaths. Compare that to Finland, only 959 deaths. If we compare that to Denmark, Denmark only has, if I could, can't really see on this screen, only around 2,000 deaths. So compared to Scandinavia, the deaths for Sweden have been very, very poor. If we look at the measures of things that Sweden have done to tackle coronavirus, there have been a number of myths when talking about the response to the coronavirus pandemic in Sweden. Some of them have been that there hasn't been any lockdown measures or any attempts at social distancing at all. That is not true at all. So what Sweden had done was, instead of mandating social distancing, closing of venues, etc., instead recommended to people that they should socially distance, that they should only travel when necessary, that they should work from home. And for a lot of Swedes, this is what they had done. However, they did not do things like close schools. And that inevitably did lead to a rise in cases and a rise of deaths. So Sweden did not implement well enough measures to tackle the spread of coronavirus. And as a direct result of that, they had a death toll that was much higher than it needed to be. I know a lot of people as well will claim that the coronavirus is, oh, it's just the flu. I don't know why this claim is being made because it's completely false. So I have got one sighting here for the, I've lost it now. So the mortality rate for the flu in the United States, for example. So that was around, let me see if I can find it. I think I've lost it, but it's far dwarfed when it comes to the number of deaths by coronavirus. It's just no comparison. Coronavirus is far more contagious and far more lethal than the flu. So I don't know why that comparison would be made, not least because seasonal flu is, as the name suggests, seasonal. Coronavirus doesn't really have that limitation. It's infecting people and killing people all year round, which is why it is such a problem. As well as that, if I just go through these tabs. So yes, one of the countries I was going to talk about is, of course, Brazil. Now, some of you may know this, some of you may not, but the president for Brazil at the moment is a man called Bolsonaro. Now, Bolsonaro is essentially of the same ilk as BB, in that he does not believe social distancing measures are necessary. He does not think people need to wear masks. He does not think venues need to close down. He essentially doesn't really believe in any lockdown measures at all. And as a result of that, Brazil has one of the worst responses to the coronavirus in the world. they are approaching 500,000 deaths from coronavirus. Let that sink in. 500,000 deaths in Brazil. And it still has no signs of slowing down, and there still has no real signs of change. The only real response to the coronavirus pandemic that Brazil has been able to do is at a state level, because the governments do not think that lockdowns are necessary, as I've discussed before. So that is a direct result of, or that has caused these very, very large numbers of deaths, which I would argue could have been avoided if lockdown measures were introduced. You could also look at other countries for examples of how the response to coronavirus can have a dramatic effect on the numbers of deaths. So you could look at a country like New Zealand, for example. So New Zealand's response to the coronavirus pandemic has been very, very swift and very, very strict. Almost immediately, travel from countries such as China, such as Iran, were reduced, almost cut off. I think travel between these countries was completely barred. Not only that, they did institute several lockdowns. They were enforced very, very strictly, as well as social distancing and all these other kinds of measures that we are used to. And as a result of that, New Zealand has basically had almost the lowest deaths of any other country. So they have had 2,326 confirmed cases of coronavirus and only 26 deaths, which is a very, very, very small amount. Now, bear in mind, there are a few other things to take into consideration here. First of all, New Zealand is very, very sparsely populated, which does help in its favor. Yeah, no problem. What was I going to say? Yeah, also, New Zealand is essentially self-sufficient. It doesn't really rely on the amount of travel or imports and exports like other countries may do. These are all things that have helped New Zealand have some of the lowest figures of coronavirus cases and deaths. That is completely fine, but I would argue that a significant factor in why these statistics are so remarkably low has been the strength of the response by the New Zealand Prime Minister. Another thing that people will argue was another thing that people that deny that coronavirus is such a problem will argue is that, coronavirus only affects older people. Now, whilst that is mainly true, the mortality rate for older people catching coronavirus is much, much higher than younger people. The idea that young people are not affected by coronavirus at all, or at least it's nothing to worry about, is completely false. As you can see by this graph here, this is deaths from coronavirus in the UK, cumulative deaths by age band. You can see by far the highest figures are of people over the age of 75. But if you look at people over the age of 30 or between the ages 30 to 50, you still do have some significant deaths. Not only that, but there exists such a thing as long COVID, if I've still got that tab somewhere. So long COVID is where you can develop long-term symptoms even after recovering from the virus itself. This is very well documented and is a known problem for people that have caught the disease and have recovered, particularly in young people. So this is not, this virus is not something to be taken lightly. It's a very, very serious threat to our lives and to our health, and it should be taken very seriously. That's why these lockdown measures, social distancing, masks, vaccines are very, very important. And I yield the rest of my time.
Lovely. I think he accidentally came out of the stream there. We'll just wait for him to come back, BB. Obviously, yeah, so, you know, we won't carry on. Hello, everybody in the chat. BulletBill's now coming back in. Paul Heath, hello, mate. Well, maybe we'll have to get Paul on for a debate as well sometime. I know Paul would be a great debate there. I hope you're all well in the chat. Thank you very much for coming along. Thanks, BulletBill, for that, mate. And we will now go on to BB and his up to 15-minute presentation. Would you like to share your screen at all?
Just quickly. Very sorry about that. Just yeah, rookie error.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
I pulled a conspiracy cats.
Yeah, no worries, mate. No worries. BB, would you like to share your screen at all?
Look, I have links. I basically have a discussion. If anybody wants to see the links, you can post them on
Okay,
the
you can put them in the
video.
chat, maybe.
Yeah, because I actually have
Yep.
about 30 or 40 links. It would take me hours to get through them all. So I'm just going to summarize the information just in a discussion, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, yeah, maybe once we go to the back and forth, BulletBill may ask you to pull up one thing or something. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. So I'm gonna sort of mute myself now. So you have up to 15 minutes. Yeah. So go ahead. I'm still listening, obviously. So if you do want to share your screen at any point, just say, and I'll share it for you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Lovely. So 10 minutes from now.
Okay. So
15. Sorry.
I might want to show Sweden's graph because that says a lot of information. But I'll describe it if I can. So basically, in terms of Sweden, the actual graph of deaths show exactly the same profile as France and the UK. So if there were no measures, there were measures, people did stay at home, there was distancing, there were never masks, and there was never any lockdown. That's a fact. If you can, there were even bans on masks, and I've had chats with, I've had discussions in the chats where they say Sweden did have masks. They never had mandatory masks ever. Even on public transport in peak hour times, they recommended to wear masks, but they never made it mandatory. Now, looking at another European country, I'll just focus on masks at the moment. In terms of masks, the very first country, or one of the first countries to enact masks after the Asian countries, was the Czech Republic. Now, they had mandates since March 2020, so that as soon as it pretty much started, they had their mandates, and they also have one of the highest death rates. So in terms of looking at actual deaths, you can go to Worldometers, go to coronavirus, and go to Europe, and you can see all the European countries there. A way to actually look at per capita deaths is to go into deaths per million people. And the Czech Republic has one of the highest deaths. I can actually tell you what it is. Just a moment. And that's okay. There we go. So Europe, so UK, France are all pretty high up there. And in terms of deaths per million, Czechia is the third highest in the whole continent in Europe. It's higher than Brazil. So, and also just to talk about Brazil, the president, Brazil is a federation, so he doesn't have full control over the whole country. So there were measures there as well. There's been measures in every single country. It's just a measure of levels of measures and how many freedoms are restricted and et cetera, et cetera. So countries like China, Australia and New Zealand and the UK now have very high levels of restrictions on life now. But what I find interesting about the UK is deaths have gone down by a big margin. If you look at the most recent death count per day, it's gone down to a handful, and they're still in lockdown. And they're talking about
BB, sorry to cut you off, mate. Would it be possible to just are you at a screen where you can share your screen at all? I just think just for this moment, it would be quite cool to just be able to have the graph on screen.
Which graph of which country?
The sort of main one, the main sort of I've stopped your time, by the way. The main topic, it's just I think if we do have the visual, it would be a little bit better.
Okay.
I can see BulletBill trying to search it or drop it in the chat. Put the links in the chat.
If you like, I could bring it up for you, BB, because I've got I've got some of the graphs up. So which one would you like?
Okay, so okay, well, go to You can look at the WHO. I think it's very similar information. Can you bring up daily deaths of the UK? It's in worldometers. If you go to coronavirus for the UK, it shows a graph of deaths.
Hold on. That's very easy. 1 sec. And let me share my screen.
Good to see Dr. Peel in the chat, by the way. I hope you're doing okay.
There you go.
Right. Lovely. That's it. Yeah, continue now then, please, buddy. I'll start your time again.
Okay, is that UK or?
That's UK, yeah.
UK cases. Can you go down and show deaths at all,
or? Yes. Hold on.
I think
deaths.
it's
you
scroll down, it will show deaths.
That's deaths. You have to click this. Yeah, here's deaths.
I'll click deaths on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, this is deaths right now.
That's deaths. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, I find it perplexing that the UK is still locked down with that number of deaths. So
the UK currently isn't locked down.
Sorry.
The UK.
Oh, guys, no, this is obviously the sort of 10-minute presentation at the minute, guys. So yeah, really, we do need just BB, kind of, obviously without BulletBill at the minute. If you could refrain from chatting at the minute.
Okay, so well, clearly there, if I'm talking about a response to the pandemic, when you've got such a low number of deaths, I don't see the damage caused from a lockdown with that number of deaths just there alone is quite perplexing, just on that fact alone. If we go to Brazil, look, it's going to take too long to figure out how to screenshot. I only started talking to you 2 minutes before this presentation, and it's a different software to what I've used before. So you're just going to have to take my word for it on Brazil.
I'll tell you what. Sorry, BB. Just again, if you would like, I'll try and bring up some stuff for. I don't mind doing that.
Bring up Brazil. Bring up Brazil if you can. Yeah. I just go through 1 or 2 countries because it will take a long time. Brazil and then Sweden, and then we'll stop there.
Okay, Brazil. Deaths or cases?
Brazil, deaths. Yeah, so yeah, it looks pretty flat there. Deaths. It looks like it's starting to drop there. So it did spike a little bit, and then it has started to drop. India is also the same. They both had recent, maybe it's the tropical weather, it's a different profile. From what we see with other countries, it does spike in the winter. So all over Europe and the US, especially the northern states, it did spike up, regardless of any measures. And that's what we see with Sweden, UK, and France. But moving on from these stats, all right, we'll leave statistics alone because anybody can cherry pick any country and say, look at this and look at that. So really what I want to discuss is basically the measures cost more than the actual results. And this is where I have some quotes to say. Okay, so basically, great. So lockdown, this is an actual quote. Great. So lockdown apparently means we'll get more infections further down the line unless we lock down again and again, because each one stifles natural immunity more and more. This is what the lockdown skeptics like Gupta have said all along. Now the DT wants to reveal this is a scare story. What's the answer then? Just giving to become a socially isolated society? After a decade or 2, people will be dying of the common cold because their immune system will have become too lazy and forgotten about the viruses that they used to see on a regular basis. Worse still, kids will be growing up and not catching stuff when their immune system is in its training phase, learning what threats to build resistance against. This whole debacle will lead us to ever greater dependence on vaccines for every virus, even common colds, and it will be a constant battle to keep ahead of the curve as more of them evolve to become more transmissive, or evade the antibodies the vaccines have produced. We need to grow up and accept mild to moderate respiratory virus as an inevitable and unavoidable part of life and death. So sorry for the long quote, but that's a direct quote from.
Are you able to drop a link to the quote at all?
All the links are what I sent you in an email. So there's more I need to go through. So we need to move on. We don't have time for me to go.
I'll tell you what I'll do. Actually, I'll put all of your links in the description after this. If anyone does want to double check, yeah. So you've still got another 6 minutes, mate. If you want to carry on,
I'll keep talking.
Yeah.
This one's in the Lancet. It's in the link to your email. Another quote: obesity is a major cause of death. Increased mortality per million was significantly associated with higher obesity prevalence and per capita gross domestic product, reduced income dispersion, reduced mortality, and a number of critical cases. Rapid border closures, full lockdowns, and widespread testing were not associated with COVID-19 mortality per million people. However, full lockdowns and reduced country vulnerability to biological threat, i.e. high scores on the global health security scale for risk environment. Now, just interject there, countries like Brazil and India don't have very good health systems, and that's another major factor in why they have high casualties for that reason. And also, I'll just keep going. Florida deaths, in terms of actual counting of deaths, many have been overcounted. So many tests were PCR, they had to be PCR positive. That doesn't mean they directly died from COVID, they died with COVID. Okay, I'm not saying that that was the entire situation, but many were just counted with COVID because they were elderly, they were dying anyway. Many had other conditions. So I'll just, again, another quote in the email. The Florida House investigators stressed that nearly 60% of the COVID-19 records classified by the Department of Health had errors or were recorded in a manner inconsistent with state and national guidance. They also provided evidence, as noted earlier, that 10% of these alleged COVID-19 deaths were misclassified. I maintain this latter 10% estimate is far too conservative and moreover reflects compliance with the CDC's April 2020 COVID-19 death certificate coding guidelines, which destroyed the logical firewall between Part 1, specific cause of, and Part 2, contributions to individual deaths. Accordingly to these 1,256 records where COVID-19 is not even listed as the final cause of death, one could add the 175 listing non-COVID-19 immediate and underlying causes, 1,345 occurring in hospice care, and the 3,451 that somehow classified COVID-19 alone as both the immediate and underlying cause of death, despite acknowledging contributing comorbidities or conditions. This aggregate mortality total indicates plausibly that up to 45% of Florida's death certificates recorded COVID-19 deaths may not merit that classification. Okay, that's from the Gateway Pundit. The link is in there. Also, there were, I don't have a quote to say, I'll just say this briefly. Flu statistics, unsurprisingly, flu deaths dropped significantly during 2020. So that's a little bit unusual. Why would all these flu deaths disappear in the same year that COVID spiked? So I would say many actual COVID classified deaths were the flu. That makes a lot of sense. I don't have solid proof of that, but with millions of cases out there, it is very difficult to ascertain. in Africa, now if we're going to Africa, more people die in Africa from hunger than from COVID. No one said anything about that. No one's really mentioned that for the last, since the 80s when they talked about famine back then. 22. Another example. How much time do I have left at STST? I'm nearly finished.
You have, well, about a minute and a half, because we spoke a little bit, so you've got about a minute and a half.
Okay, I'll be very brief. There is a video, but in Florida, masks and lockdown restrictions were all lifted and deaths kept on dropping and there was no resurgence, so restrictions didn't mean anything there. And also, another point I want to make, just in general with the debates, now I'm not saying I'm not having a fair debate, I'm allowed to speak here, but whenever I make a comment anywhere, I'm rapidly abused and told, you're a killer of people, or you're irresponsible, or you're selfish. Well, that's actually not the case. COVID measures have killed people as well. So taking that moral high horse is a little bit disingenuous in my book. And here's a quote. I don't know the source, but it did stick out with me. A number of scientists say a climate of fear has taken hold, where academics are afraid to speak out for fear of being vilified. The replacement of nuanced debate with hyperpolarization and insult trading has prompted many to despair over the erosion of healthy scientific discussion and a potential breakdown of public trust. Okay, there's many more points I can go through, but I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, yep, you had 15 seconds left, so that's okay. So what we're going to do now, guys, is a back and forth, 30 to 40 minutes or however long either of you want to go on, really. But I will ask, no ad hom attacks. I'm pretty sure there won't be. I can imagine it may about to get a little bit heated, which I'm sure either of us don't mind. You know, I'm not wanting a dumpster fire, shall we say, but I understand people will be passionate. So no, try your best not to cut each other off. Let each other finish sentences, and let's just have a fair but passionful debate. So Bullet Bill started. So obviously you just finished your bit there. So I'd say, Bullet Bill, did you have a point to make? And let's get this going.
Okay, let's get started.
Yep.
Right. So BB, you talked about. So you made one point in your sort of monologue there that the flu cases dropped down in 2020. They were much lower than they should have been, and therefore that means those flu cases were actually COVID cases were being misclassified as the flu. So you said you didn't have any data to back that up. If you don't have any data, then why are you making that claim?
Look, I don't have enough time. I have 50 pieces of evidence here. I will not. And going back, the monologue that was my time to speak. You had your monologue, so why are you telling me that this was a monologue? I had my points, and that's what a monologue is. But going back to the flu, I have not gone. There is a video of it, but I have not gone into enough detail to actually break it apart, because at the end of the day, it is close to impossible to prove what is a flu death and what is a COVID death, because the symptoms are very similar. So in terms of, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy theory, but the government authorities around the world are incentivized to class deaths as COVID deaths rather than flu deaths, when I am quite sure. I actually do have a source, sorry, I found it. I have 50 pieces of info here. So
the thing is, though, you need a decent amount of evidence. That's quite a claim you're making, to imply that doctors are making it up, saying like, I'll tell you what, they're dying. Let's say it's because of COVID. Let's just make it up. So
I did find
where's
it.
the evidence?
I did find it, and I can send you the link, or ST and ST the link on an email.
I have actually I have forwarded those links to BulletBill. So again, if you guys did want to do that, pull links up. It's completely fine. You know, I'm sure BulletBill would share. It is nice. A lot of people in the chat are saying, like, you know, can we see citation for this? And you know, so it's nice sometimes to actually
look,
put the links
I'm
out.
not trying to hide anything. There's just a lot of information. I'll send it to you right
Yeah.
now. I'll send
like I say,
individually.
I've already sent it to BulletBill. If you know what I mean, I've actually already sent those links to BulletBill.
I have them as well. I can
yeah.
pull them up if you'd like, but I'd need to know which one you're talking about. If you're talking about the Florida one, then I can provide that link myself.
Sorry to cause confusion. I sent a whole bunch of links to STST. Now I've sent him one link about the flu. So he's got that. Yeah.
I get you. If you do have links, mate, oh no, you won't be able to post them in the chat, will you?
Look, I don't know this exact software. I used to be able to do it on a different one. For me to figure it out now could take me a few minutes. So you've got the email right now. If you can show it.
So BB, another thing. So StreamYard does have a chat. Can you see on the side? It's got a little chat. You might be able to use that.
Hold on a sec.
There should be, if you have a look, there should be a chat on actual StreamYards. And I'd imagine that StreamYards probably wouldn't care as much about posting links. So
let me see. Hold on. I've sent it in a chat. What do I do with that now?
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, that's all people want to. Yeah. So anyone watching at home, basically, or BulletBill can now pull up what you're talking about, if you know what I mean. Yeah, that's all people wanted, really, dude.
Right. So that's what I'll
absolutely
do.
Cool.
That's what I'll do. Sorry
actually,
about
Steve,
that.
I wouldn't be able to put it up. So
that's okay. But, well, if it's in the chat, how do people see it on YouTube?
No, it's in the right. So the link is in the StreamYard's chat. So the people in the YouTube chat can't see it right now. I can't post it because STST's removed my wrench, which is fine. But
yeah,
if maybe
I wish I hadn't done that now.
It's no, it's fine. So BB,
why don't I put it in the chat right here?
It might not work for you either because I don't think you're a mod. So I don't think it will let you post a link.
It's showing something. I just put it up. Can you see it?
One of the other moderators might be able to okay it.
Either that, or if you can put it to STST, then he will be able to post it.
Look, we're gonna be boring the audience now. Can you? It's in the chat. I can see it. Is that working? dailymail.co.uk.
That's the StreamYard's chat, not the YouTube chat. So the people watching the YouTube stream can't see that. It's only us three that can see that.
Let me see if I can.
It's STST. Do you want to go from StreamYard's chat to YouTube chat or something like that? This is I agree. This is taking too long.
I'm literally this is going to take about. Sorry, this is going to take me about a minute, guys, and I'm gonna actually have to leave this stream for a second, but I'm going to share, I'm going to post every link that we're talking about into the description.
Okay.
If you know what I mean, and then you'll be able to find it. All right. But yeah, no, sorry guys, I'll be back in 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll talk about it while he's working it out.
Right. Okay. I'm going to bring something up actually, BB. So your argument was, or what you implied was, there was a reduction in the cases of the flu, and you think that was suspicious because are people claiming that the flu was actually COVID deaths? One, you don't have any evidence for it, and that link that you provided doesn't have any additional evidence. That doesn't really prove anything. Two, do you not think that the measures that were introduced to reduce the spread of COVID-19, another airborne virus, would have also reduced the spread of the flu. Does that not make sense?
I'll admit that's entirely possible. But there were deaths, though. You're saying it was effective, and there were still deaths in the winter. So it has to be one or the other.
No,
if
I'm
it
not
was
saying
effective for the flu, it would have had to have been effective for COVID, but it wasn't effective for COVID.
It was. What
COVID
do you mean?
substituted for the flu.
So hold on. So are you saying that the lockdown measures were not effective at controlling coronavirus?
But the deaths in the UK were higher than in Sweden. They were higher, and the flu deaths
they were higher in Sweden.
Disappeared.
Right, yeah. No, they're higher in Sweden. The thing is with the country's approach, okay? So there are lots of things that affect the spread of coronavirus and the number of deaths. One of those is most certainly the presence of lockdowns or the absence of lockdowns. However, there are also lots of other things that will affect the number of cases and the number of deaths. So the UK, for example, is a little bit more densely populated. So that's bad. There's also a larger number of people traveling in and out of the UK. That's bad. Take a country like India and Brazil. And this is a point that you brought up. The facilities to be able to deal with infectious disease just aren't there as much. Their hospitals aren't as well equipped. So that's another factor. So whilst, yes, having whether there's a lockdown or not is one factor, it's very, very difficult to compare a country like the UK that has, by the way, also had an extremely poor response to the pandemic to a country like Sweden. What I have done is I've compared Sweden with other Scandinavian countries like Norway and Finland, and Sweden has by far the highest deaths.
But that's, yeah, but they are each Scandinavian country is very different from one another. Denmark is attached to Europe. Finland it's almost in another area. I do know geography well, and both Norway and Finland are physically very well separated. Well, really, from the rest.
They're
of the
next
world.
to Sweden. They literally border Sweden.
Yeah, they've got it. They share a border, but those borders are practically depopulated. It's almost like sharing a water border, a sea border. It's not actually.
Just cutting, guys. All of the links that were sent to me earlier are now in the description of this video. So anybody that does want to double check any sources BB has given me, they are now in the link. All right, carry on, guys. Sorry.
Okay, BB, how close does a country have to be to Sweden to be comparable? You're not allowing me to compare Sweden to these countries, despite the fact that they are neighbouring, whereas UK is so much further out than Sweden. So that comparison is okay, but I can't use countries that border Sweden. How does that make sense?
Let's forget about country comparisons for a moment. Let's all look at this country versus that country and that country versus this country, okay? Let's just look at Sweden on its own, just by itself, okay? Now, Sweden, okay, the argument with this respiratory virus is the exponential effect of the growth of the virus, okay? One person infects 5 people, 5 infect 25, 50, and so forth. That's an exponential growth curve. That was one of the major fears of the virus, is that it would grow exponentially and kill a large percentage of the population. Some estimates were hundreds of thousands. In Sweden alone was 100,000 just in Sweden. So it's actually 14,000 so far of actual deaths with a PCR test, which I don't believe is everyone is directly related to a COVID death. Now, if this is growing exponentially, and the public health authorities would have said, oh, this is a bit of a worry. This is how the Australian government thinks. It's going to grow exponentially, and that's why it's been over a year and there's still full-fledged police-style lockdown over a year after the actual start of this pandemic. Now, in the case of, I'm just looking at Sweden, I'm not comparing it to Finland or the UK or any other country. Now, they would have thought to themselves, the public health experts would have said, if this is going to grow exponentially, why don't we lock everybody into their houses? Why don't we make everybody wear masks when they do leave? Which has been applied in Australia.
Stevie, you think that coronavirus, let's say there's no lockdown measures at all, no one does anything. So you're saying that people thought that coronavirus would grow exponentially, okay?
That's what the official model has actually predicted. There were modelers predicting 100 million deaths and more. So
right, do you think, right, so the thing is, the model, it does predict that cases would exponentially grow, but they would not continue to exponentially grow. Do you know why that would be?
Why? Because of natural immunity, herd immunity.
Okay, let's sort of. So let's say there's a forest and there's a forest fire and there's fire burning through the forest. As the trees get burnt, they can no longer get burnt again because a burnt tree does not like.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So as there will get to a point, even with no lockdown measures at all, where coronavirus cases will drop off. So the model is not to say that, oh, coronavirus will grow exponentially full stop. They will grow exponentially to a point, and then numbers will come down. All right.
That's right. That is my argument. That's basically what I'm arguing. And
so your argument is that coronavirus will eventually end. So that's fine.
Well, my argument was this. I'm not opposing all measures, okay, but definitely ineffective lockdown measures and ineffective mask mandates. Okay.
Okay. So define which lockdown measures do you have a problem with, like specifically?
Well, I just said it: the lockdowns and masks. So because these are the most destructive.
So you think people should be able to go out and socialize? I mean, just get a bit more detail, maybe would be like good.
Okay, so the detail would be definitely not the schools, because the young people are not nearly as affected as the older people. So definitely not the schools. Definitely even your average shops, small shops, maybe major events. And I think that's what Sweden actually did. They sealed off later on. I think this is why they were most affected death-wise. They did seal off the elderly, and they did a very good job of it once they did realize the full impact, which is why their death count is actually lower than full lockdown countries like France and the UK. I know you'll argue it's density, etc., and all of that, but still, what we're looking at is the deaths amongst the elderly is significantly higher, as in 1,000 times the difference between a 10-year-old and an 80-year-old. And that's why I'm also perplexed at why they're looking at vaccines for younger people. At the end of the day, it's a low-risk respiratory virus. Why go that far?
Right. Okay. So what is your explanation for when it was my time and I was giving my introduction, and I very, very clearly showed in 2 countries, I can show more if you'd like, where I could draw a line and the date when lockdown measures were started, and a very, very clear drop, both in the number of cases and the number of deaths. To me, that's extremely convincing evidence that these lockdown measures work in reducing cases and deaths. So what do you say to that?
I agree with you, but you don't need to show me. You tell me exactly. I'm looking at all the stats exactly where. Tell me the date, tell me the country. I'll look it up in a few seconds. Just tell me which one. Date and time.
I did actually tell you the dates and the countries for UK and France in my opening statement.
Yeah, you did. So do you want to refer to which date exactly? I don't remember what you said 20 minutes ago exactly. What date was it?
Okay, let's go to France.
Do you want to share the screen?
Yeah, okay. That might be a good idea. If I... Sorry, bear with me. Okay. France. So the first lockdown was March the... sorry, bear with me. So it was 17th of March was the first lockdown in France. 17th of March is around there. So there was an initial increase, but then there was a decrease after that. Then the second lockdown was 30th of October. You'd think I'd be able to remember like two numbers, but there you go.
Okay.
30th of October is around about there, and there we can see a very significant drop in cases and following deaths.
So you're saying, okay, 30th of October, cases dropped, and then deaths dropped.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so now from those daily deaths, I usually look at deaths. I don't always look at cases because the second round of cases was a lot higher than the first because they did a lot more testing.
Mm-hmm.
More testing means more COVID deaths. So there were probably more deaths.
Whoa, hold on. What I'm not sure I agree with that. What do you mean more testing, more coronavirus deaths?
Well, you would have had undetected deaths in the first.
Oh, I'm with you. Sorry, I'm with you. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Okay, so now what's been argued by many doctors and scientists is that death graph there is summer and winter. Simply summer and winter. If they did lockdown the first time, and I don't know, did they did it again? So they turned lockdown off. I remember that. I don't know the exact details, but the deaths went back up. Wouldn't the scientists have had warning that this could be a winter virus and got locked down before the second wave happened again? Or because the UK and France have exactly the same death curves or death charts.
So I don't really understand your point because there were two lockdowns for both UK and France. One of them was in summer, one of them was in winter. Both of them had the same effect. So no, this isn't a summer or a winter virus as we know.
My argument clearly shows in temperate locations, all the death charts show a rapid rise in winter and a big drop in summer. That shows in all the European countries, especially Northern Europe, including even Norway, even the light countries may have those, but I'll have to look at that.
Okay,
so basically the cases go up in winter is my argument. It's the weather, it's not the actual measures.
Okay, so the problem is with that, what evidence do you have that it's the temperature or the weather that's causing that? Because you will know that almost every country that brought in measures did so at the beginning of summer anyway. So the data matches exactly what we'd expect given the response. So there's nothing really to say that was caused by weather. In fact, there've been the levels of coronavirus during the summer have still been quite high. So I don't really see the correlation there.
There's basically a dip in every country in July and August. In every single country.
But like I've said, that coincides with lockdown measures that have been introduced. So during that time, for most countries, lockdown was in effect. So how do you know that it wasn't just the lockdown measures doing what they should have done?
Why did it spike again in every single country at the start of the winter for every single country in the Northern Hemisphere?
Well, I can only speak for the UK because I'm not entirely sure what other countries did. But in the UK, the measures were relaxed. people were allowed to go outside, people allowed to mix in certain numbers, people were allowed to go to restaurants, etc., and that caused the number of cases to go up.
So they all screwed up exactly at the same time, because all the death charts show a first wave at the start in March, April, and this is where I actually have got my thinking from. Now, if you go to Worldometers or the WHO, they'll all show the same thing. I think their stats are quite closely aligned. France, UK, Sweden, Belarus, which is a country that did avoid lockdown, so here's more evidence, had a spike in the first half of 2020. It dropped in the middle of the year, and then it spiked again in winter. So all these countries did not see the winter coming. They relaxed.
Okay, right. I'm going to share my screen.
Of which country? They're all show nearly exactly. It's almost like they're all related. There are variations.
Right, okay. So let's put that to the test, shall we? Is France's cases and death curve? Is the UK's cases and death curve? So I don't really see the level of similarity that you're
from who,
claiming
with who?
here.
UK and who else?
And France, for example. Shall I do another country?
Yeah, do another country.
Okay, let's do, say, Italy.
Italy?
There's probably an easy way to do this, but never mind.
Oh, what do you know? Drops in
Italy.
winter, goes up. Drops in summer, goes up again in winter in Italy. Surprising. Look at any other country.
Yeah, you see again.
They all have
these seem to be significantly different here. There's most of them have that drop in the summer, but like I've said, and I'll repeat it again, this is when countries
close to zero, a significant drop of close to zero, and then spikes again every winter, all at about the same time, just as soon as winter starts or late autumn, around there. It correlates. Now, another country that did avoid lockdown, let's look at Belarus. That's an unusual one, but they're run by.
Do you mean Belarus, DB?
Belarus. You know which country I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's look at Belarus. Same chart, same death curve. They had very low deaths. Their deaths were only a handful, so it's very difficult there. But it did go up in winter to 10 deaths per day. They almost had no deaths. That's a strange one. But their cases did go up. It's a very strange one.
I'm looking at Belarus right now.
Belarus has made my argument even better because their deaths are so low. It's almost a handful per. They're lower than Sweden. This is very strange.
Okay, 3,000 people died. Right. So again, what you're doing is you're looking at lots of graphs that describe the number of cases and deaths and saying there seems to be a link between winter and summer. But how have you proven that? How have you proven that these?
I thought you studied biology. Many viruses have a seasonal influence.
Many do. Many don't. How do you know this one does?
Well, it looks pretty obvious to me.
No, it doesn't. So I could show you correlations of all sorts of things, but you need to demonstrate that cause. So I could claim that
my correlation is stronger than your correlation because you're telling me there's measures when every single country has different measures. In Australia, we have states and even regions which have different measures. But when we span across countries with similar temperature profiles, so we're not talking about comparing Brazil and timings versus France. We're comparing France and UK are similar, France and the Czech Republic are similar, France and Germany are similar, etc. They're all similar. Northern US Yeah. So go
Again,
ahead.
BB, right? You've got to demonstrate the link between summer and winter, or temperature, or weather, or whatever you want, whatever you're claiming it is, and coronavirus cases. All right, because there is a correlation that you're noticing, but you haven't ruled out when you do a science investigation. What you have to do is control the other variables. In other words, let's say I'm looking at, how much water does a plant need to grow? I wouldn't use different plants. I wouldn't use different types of soil. I would use everything exactly the same, or as similar as I can possibly get it, and then just change the water. That way, I can surmise that, the levels, amount of water that I've given the plants must have had an effect. All you've done is spotted a pattern and claimed without evidence that that's caused by whether it's summer or winter. So again, where is your evidence? This is the last time I'm asking, but I'm moving on to
okay. U.S. National Library of Medicine. Okay, this is a direct quote. I can send it to you. Okay, it's a long paper. Just lost it. Hold on.
Just pop the link in StreamYard.
Thank you, everyone that's here at the minute. We've got 34 people, absolutely amazing. And I just want to say a quick hello to It's Probing Time 666. He is a patron of mine and very, very good. Really has helped me out in the past. So I just want to say a quick hello. Being in Australia, because I'm not often live at this time, where he always misses me. So really glad to see you, mate. Yeah, sorry, guys. Did anyone want to share their screen at all?
Not right now. I don't know if BB's going to. Actually,
Go
on. I'll let you go first, BB.
No, you can go. You can talk. I'm still looking. I'm still deciding what exactly to read.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen now. So the claim is that coronavirus is a seasonal virus, so therefore it's bound to increase during the winter. Lockdown had nothing to do with it, etc. Which I don't think is true at all. And I've actually found something quite interesting. So if we look at India, very, very sadly, India is in a very, very bad place right now. It's struggling to deal with the levels and numbers of coronavirus. Let's have a look at the number of cases and deaths here. And here we see a huge spike of pretty much now, or a few weeks ago, or just a month ago, during summer. So very, very strange. Not only that, but India's in a very hot, temperate climate. So if coronavirus is a seasonal virus that only really thrives in winter, why are we getting such a spike in this country?
India is not temperate. I'm talking about temperate environments. So in countries like Brazil and India and other tropical countries, it seems to go in waves, which is a lot flatter.
No, BB, you made the claim that this is a seasonal virus, and that for every country, we saw peaks in the winter and dying off in the summer. So it's summer now. Why are we getting this peak in India?
Okay, so now let me. I'll put that link in that chat that you said, or where can I put it? In StreamYard. Where did I put that link? Private chat. That's.
So yeah. How about should we move the goalpost?
Yeah, I've put the link in the
chat. Thank you, Dave.
Can I quote from the article yet, or?
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks for that. I'll just load it up here.
Can I start the quote, or?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so the study's model revealed a strong correlation between changing temperatures and the number of COVID-19 cases and deaths from a baseline of 31 degrees, the US midsummer average. By the time the weather drops to a chilly 5 degrees centigrade, the model shows deaths rising by 160%, due only to the influence of cold weather, even after controlling for state shelter-in-place orders. COVID-19 transmission showed an even stronger effect. 4 times more new COVID cases are expected when temperatures drop to 5 degrees, assuming no other interventions such as masks or social distancing. Only when temperatures drop a few degrees below freezing, the point when water droplets quickly freeze in the air, do Carson and his team project transmission to slow. So that says what I'm seeing, and correlates with a lot of other coronaviruses and respiratory viruses. So
yeah, but again, BB, so why are some countries right? Some are right now. Why are some countries, Brazil, for example, India, still having massive spikes in coronavirus?
I'll repeat myself again. I'm talking only about temperate locations. I'm not talking about tropical locations like Brazil and India. They seem to have a flatter curve for some reason. It could be the way that it works in humidity. I don't know. But this is a fact with lots of other coronaviruses and viruses in general, respiratory viruses. It may be something to do with the way heating works in the home. You'd have to research that a lot more. There's a lot we don't know as well, as in all scientists don't know. And of course, SARS-CoV-2, it's only been about a year. There's a lot we don't know about how this virus works.
Okay. So,
as in all of us, all of society, the government's just jumped on this quick lockdown bandwagon, which is understandable. Play it safe as you possibly can, and I'm not disagreeing that lockdowns have worked in Australia and New Zealand. They have worked, but they've got to stay perpetually into lockdown. It's been over a year, and there are parts of Australia that are still in lockdown perpetually.
Right, okay. Let's talk about some of your other lockdown points. So first of all, one of your arguments was the UK is still in lockdown right now. Are you not aware that the UK has very recently lifted a lot of its restrictions?
Of course, yes.
Right. So why did you make that point?
Well, I have been reading the news that it's the 21st of June is the major day that there'll be most of the restrictions will be lifted. But there are scientists who want to prolong that further.
Right. Okay. So you also claimed.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
So you also claimed that lockdown measures have resulted in deaths. Can you give me an example of some of these deaths or some sort of evidence of that, please?
Okay. All right. We'll get to now. I've got 50 points of information, so I have to look through it. While I'm looking through it, I just want to make a statement about that. I am not denying lockdowns don't work. Well, within reason, I think seasons has a bigger influence because the charts show quite a clear influence between all countries. Okay, now I'll tell you another quote. All around the world, the coronavirus and its restrictions are pushing already hungry communities over the edge, cutting off meager farms from markets and isolating villages from food and medical aid. Virus-linked hunger is leading to the deaths of 10,000 more children a month over the first year of the pandemic, according to an urgent call to action from the United Nations shared with the Associated Press ahead of its publication in the Lancet Medical Journal. Now, I'll put a link in the chat there on that one.
Just to let you guys know, there's 5 minutes left.
Okay. Yep.
So sorry.
Go
5
ahead.
minutes of that chat. I'm more than happy to actually, allow it to carry on for another maybe 10 minutes after that. completely depends on you guys. You know, I'm not just going to cut it off. And then after that, we'll just have maybe 10, 15 minutes, see if anyone in the actual live chat wants to ask any questions. Yeah, just want to let you guys know. Technically, we would be ending in 5 minutes, but I'm happy to go for another 10 after that. Yeah, carry on, guys.
Okay, so some of the things you're bringing up, BB, is completely fine, and I would agree with, in fact. So if what you're saying is lockdown is causing its own harmful effects to society, that is absolutely true. I could list, well, I mean, where do you start? Mental health, lack of exercise,
Yes.
economic effects, things like that. These are all very, very bad things that we do not want. I'm not arguing that lockdown is, the lockdown's completely fine. Let's all do lockdown right now because there's no side effects of it. Of course not. Of course, lockdown is quite a drastic measure that we are doing in a response to this global emergency. However, the claim you made was that lockdown was causing deaths, and you've kind of shifted the goalposts a bit, and you've linked me to an article talking about the effect of coronavirus on child hunger. That's not really what I asked for. So, do you have any evidence of direct people that have died as a direct result of lockdown measures?
Well, that is okay. So there's also cancer screenings plus other medical. Now I've just sent another link, the Lancet Oncology. I'll do another quote. So can I read this out from that link?
You could use your own words if you want, but feel free to read it out.
Do you know what? I don't use my own words. I just read what the assessment from the oncology department says, because your side always says to read the science, talk to the experts. So that's exactly what I'm doing. We collected data for 32,583 patients with breast cancer, 2,497 975 with colorectal cancer, 6,000 blah 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 with esophageal cancer, 29,000 with lung cancer. Across the three different scenarios, compared with pre-pandemic figures, we estimate a 7.9% to 9.6% increase in the number of deaths due to breast cancer, up to a 5-year diagnosis. All right, I'll stop there. Now I'll conclude from that, okay? These deaths, okay, you may say, oh, well, that's much less than actual COVID deaths. Many of these deaths in terms of breast cancer are young mothers, okay? So the statistics clearly show COVID affects the elderly. Now, I'm not writing off the elderly, but if I had a choice between two, a young mother and an elderly grandmother, and even elderly people have argued what I'm saying now, we would prioritize the young mother. But that's another direct effect from an oncology department in the Lancet.
BB, again, like if you're claiming a link,
how much more evidence do you need? Like, and we aren't talking about heart conditions. I could go through. There's reams and reams of data. I could go through hours and hours of things, but that's just one example, because when you don't catch a cancer early, that leads to death down the road. That's the difference between quick treatment and right up to stage 4 death, slow death as well. So, yeah.
Right, okay. Do you have any... So, okay, I see what you're saying. So you're saying lack of diagnosis is causing a higher increase of deaths for breast cancer. Is that right?
A massive increase, yes.
Do you have any figures on that? Because that's
I just talked.
Big and small is better than. Quote. Sorry, I must have missed it. How many?
It's 32,583 patients with breast cancer, 24,975 with colorectal cancer.
Right.
6,
okay. Is that this year?
This is just the oncology. We're not talking about heart conditions, other long-term conditions. many other health issues, and things we cannot measure. As I said, I can't show evidence because if someone's been locked down for, in our case, we're closing in on 1.5 years of lockdown in this country in some spots. If someone isn't exercising for 1.5 years, that could mean 5 years off their life at least. But there would need to be a decade of studies for that. It would be impossible for me to tell you now what the actual deaths will be because we don't know.
Okay, I mean, you are aware though that which country, Bob? Was that was UK?
Australia. I'm talking about Australia, where parts of this country have been locked down on and off. They turned them off again. Coincidentally, they turned off the lockdown in summer and turned it back on in winter, at the exact opposite sides of what they did in the Northern Hemisphere. So,
right, okay. I'll have to have a look at that because that the link that you posted doesn't seem to work. I don't know if you could have another try. I don't know if
it's work. I'm clicking on it now. It Lancet. I think you're right. That's not working. Okay, go to search. This is coming up with different information, but I think it's good. Put Lancet Oncology.
Right, there's the problem is I'm a little bit skeptical here because I've just looked up in Australia the figures for deaths from breast cancer, and for women, let's say 2018, for example, there were 3,000 women that died from breast cancer. So the figure you're claiming is more than that.
That's UK.
So you're saying that coronavirus created more cases somehow?
No, that's UK figures. Sorry, we're talking.
No, that's Australian figures.
I'm talking about UK figures.
I thought you said Australian figures. Okay, UK then. Let's look at UK.
I'm talking that there is a lockdown in Australia at the moment, and there's a lockdown in the UK. Whichever country has the lockdown means those people are not getting exercise. They're not going outdoors. They're not getting fresh air. There are a lot of health effects of that. Someone that is obese, that could mean the difference between life and death, or a much shorter lifespan. And of course, to me, the most important thing, a quality of life over just life and death.
Are you aware that in the UK, even in the most severe lockdown periods, people were allowed to go outside for exercise? That was one of the things that you were implicitly allowed to do.
Okay. Oh, well, that's a positive. Many countries like Italy and Spain weren't allowed. But
right, okay. Can we move on to you were talking something about natural immunity and how people weren't allowed to develop a natural immunity. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Oh, that's just a direct quote. It's just saying that, especially in the younger population and in less vulnerable groups, actually allowing it to spread is not a bad thing and may lead to less deaths in the long run, because they're training their immune system to deal with different viruses. That happens every day in your body. That is standard. If you studied biology, you would know that. That is standard.
Oh, I do know that. I don't know if you know that though. So how does that go about? How does that? Let's say I catch COVID. How does my natural immunity sort of do its thing? I'm not a hardcore scientist. I've just read what the scientists actually said about that. Dissenting scientists, not the mainstream scientists, because the average person does not want to hear this. But this is where the Swedish model came about. This is why public health went along this model. They actually said, look, amongst younger people and less vulnerable
people to allow it to spread is not actually a bad thing, even before the vaccine is distributed.
Right. Okay. Are you not aware that there are thousands of people who have died or had very serious health complications as a result of COVID
Of course,
and have
the
had
risk,
long COVID?
there is no guarantee of anything. But the risk is low. Just like there's a risk of cancer, a risk of other, who knows what else, other diseases there are out there.
Right. Are you also not aware that if you're allowing young people to just catch COVID because it's fine because of our immune system, they can then very easily pass this down. And this is one of the most contagious diseases we've seen in a long time. They could very easily pass it to more vulnerable people who will then die.
No, that's again, the vulnerable people were sheltered. That's the point. That's why Sweden actually, in the long run, did get much lower deaths towards the end, because they did set up their systems to protect the elderly and in their aged care homes, etc.
I've read somewhere that around almost 50% of the deaths that Sweden had were of the elderly and the most vulnerable.
Yeah, early on, because again, COVID did catch a lot of countries off guard, and they did stuff it up. Their system was a lot worse, again, as you say, than Finland's and Norway's. They did stuff it up. That's
good. I agree. Yeah.
But over the summer, their philosophy was, look, because their public health is less politically linked than other countries. So the Anders Tegnell, his philosophy is, we are not going to restrict society with this. The risk for younger people is low. It's not zero, because there is no zero risk scenario anywhere. There's risk of cancer, there's risk of car accidents, there's even risks of your own bathroom. Okay, we're talking relative risk. The risk is low. Their philosophy was, it is not worth locking everybody in everybody's home because of the mental impact, the cancer, all of that, which I've just been going through.
Okay, I'm curious as to what. So just a second ago, you said, "quote they mucked it up," and now you're quoting from the Swedish Prime Minister, implying that it was a good decision. So can you just clarify your position on Sweden? So do you think they had a good result? They did the right thing or wrong thing?
All right, let me clarify this. At the start, they didn't protect their care homes enough, right? Even Australia screwed that up. Most countries did, okay? They were caught off guard. It wasn't their fault. They didn't understand the nature of the virus, okay? And that's also a product of neoliberalism. With the care homes, it's cheap labor, the cheapest labor they can get. A lot of that labor goes from care home to care home or nursing home, etc. And they spread the virus more rapidly to the most vulnerable groups. And that happened in the UK. Pretty much every country, it's happened. Outside of Asia, that is exactly what happened, because you get the most vulnerable groups, you get the cheapest labor, okay, and they spread it very rapidly. Now,
okay, yeah, I agree.
By the next winter, they pretty much fixed that. But they said, we're not going to lock down, we're not going to put masks on kids, we're not even going to put masks on the general population.
Okay.
Because the risk was low.
And do you think that was the right decision or the wrong decision? Would you have done anything differently, etc.?
Well, now you can go to me, you can say to me, okay, what's the actual consequences of that? Now, when we look at countries' deaths per million, Sweden, in total, out of all the countries there, only beaten by Norway and Finland, and that very well could be because their aged care system
and
is
New Zealand.
And New Zealand is a lot higher standard, and there's also geographical issues. So it came to them later, so they were ready for it. So if we go back to the statistics and go to the actual deaths per million, okay, I've lost the
No,
website.
STST's gone. I
It's
see they'll be back.
Okay, that's okay. Sweden, I can't see what's going on. This has gone blank on me, so if I change it, I might drop out. Oh, yeah, now I can see. If you go back to, I'll look at worldometers just because of its user friendliness, but I don't think there's a big difference. If you look at all the European countries and you look at Sweden, as in what it has come in terms of deaths per million in Europe alone. We won't look outside of Europe because we muddy the waters. We've already muddied them within Europe, but now Sweden is 24th in deaths per million, 24th. UK is 15, meaning that the first country is Hungary in terms of deaths per million. They had the highest number of deaths in the country, factoring in their population.
Forgive me for interrupting, BB, but could you maybe get to the point a bit quicker? So what's...
Well, that's the point. So my point there is, it's simply this. They didn't have masks. They did have measures, but not invasive measures, and lots of restrictions on freedom and economic, we're talking non-life threatening measures. They came in around about average. So
okay, and was that the right decision in your opinion? Sweden,
absolutely the right decision. Yes.
Right. Okay. And what about when I showed you before the fact that all of its neighboring countries in Scandinavia took a very, very different approach? They responded very strongly to the virus. They did go into lockdowns, and they had far, far fewer cases and deaths of coronavirus.
Well, that's like I said, that in their case, that was just down to luck, in my opinion.
Luck.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. So you're saying that the cases, the number of cases in Norway and in Finland and in Denmark was luck.
Not luck as in they were lucky, but in terms of, like you said, connected to other countries, their connections were much lower than Sweden. Sweden has a much more multicultural population. It's a much higher population in general. It's a higher density, and it is linked to other countries. So yes, there were factors in the way Sweden worked.
Norway's sparsely populated.
Yeah, that's my point. Norway's very sparsely populated and not as many and it's a very very wealthy country, and they take care of their aged a lot better than Sweden, and of course a lot better than UK and France and the rest of Europe. They're just an outlier. They just don't have the...
It seems to me that Sweden is the outlier in the wrong way, in terms of that their deaths were much, much higher than they should have been. If you look at the rest of Scandinavia, it's Sweden that sticks out, not the other countries for being low. It's Sweden's for being high.
Well, that's
right. Anyway,
that's
I've pretty much finished. Unless is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I will because we've only got about 4 minutes left anyway. So
okay.
Yeah, there's about 3 minutes left, guys.
Anything else you want to talk about? Because then we'll talk about it briefly now.
I'll just quickly conclude that you're on mute. Did you say something, STST?
I think he's okay.
I just came in and said there was about 3 minutes left. What we're going to do, though, I'll say literally do about another 3 minutes, but then I'll let you both do like a conclusion, like a 2 or 3 minute conclusion after that. Okay, so carry on for a moment, and then I'll let you both do a roundup, if you know what I mean. Because otherwise, I can imagine it's hard to kind of, feel when to finish. So just do a roundup of how you feel the debate went yourselves.
Well, I'm still debating Sweden, so I haven't really had a chance to respond in terms of that.
Yeah, There's still 5 minutes of the debate left. 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Another hypothesis. So there's two main factors. I've discussed the system of aged care over there. So the vulnerable were a lot better protected than in Sweden in the early stages. And secondly, they had a weak flu season the year before. So, Sweden had a weak flu season, while Finland and Norway had a strong flu season. So I'll need to just have to.
What does that have anything to do with COVID?
Well, that basically means a lot of the vulnerable people had died earlier in the year in Finland and Norway, while in Sweden they had not.
So, are you sort of suggesting that there's been like this huge cull of the most vulnerable, so they weren't available to die?
Well, look, it's cull is, you can say cull, but it's just old people dying from old age. It's similar to when a heat wave comes along. A lot of the people that actually die in the heat wave are elderly people. It's not a cull. It's just nature. They're more vulnerable for different reasons. And
for what you're saying to make sense at all, there would have to be a significant number of deaths from flu. Significant increase in the number of deaths in flus in those countries, and a very, very minimal number of deaths in Sweden. And even if that were the case, I don't think that's significant enough to explain the difference in deaths and in cases. Because cases are irrelevant. If you look at cases alone, then that argument just falls flat on its face.
Actual cases?
Well, actual cases, because people can still catch coronavirus. All right, so it doesn't matter if you're vulnerable or not. People are still able to catch it regardless of the symptoms they have. So if you just look at cases, then you still see that discrepancy. You still see Sweden with by far the high number of cases in Scandinavia, Norway with a much smaller number of cases, same Finland, same with Denmark. And that would not be accounted for by this sort of mass death that you've made up for the flu.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'll let you respond, mate. I won't just cut you off. BB.
I'll put the rest in my conclusion so we can wrap this up. So.
Okay.
Just to speed
cool.
This up.
Yeah. No. Great discussion there, guys. What I think the roundup should be is maybe concentrate on not what you said yourself, but if what you took from what the other person said, maybe. But yeah. BulletBill, do you want to go first, mate?
Yeah, no problem. So my position remains the same, that lockdowns are effective in reducing the number of cases of coronavirus and the number of deaths of coronavirus. I've not found any significant evidence that lockdowns, first of all, in themselves do harm, or that lockdowns are ineffectual, or that Sweden was this kind of shining example of how you don't need lockdowns and they were completely fine. I think I did very well at debunking that. I will concede certain things. So, for example, that lockdowns are generally not very good for lots of different things, and they should only be used in kind of like an emergency scenario. However, this is that scenario, and they very much are needed at the moment. Also, to BB, I would like to say, in all honesty, thank you very much for coming on and debating. Because for a while I was thinking you were just going to say you were going to debate and not actually do it. But to your credit, you turned up, and not only that, I think for your time zone, this probably would be quite an inconvenient time zone for yourself, and that made it easier for myself and STST. So I appreciate that. You haven't used any ad hominems, and you weren't really that rude to me. Been quite respectful. So I'll have to give you credit for that. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, BB, mate.
Yes, thank you. I can say the same. You were actually, yes, very civil and respectful. Yeah, I don't. I always engage in civil behaviour whenever I can. Obviously, you can get triggered when people hurl insults at you, and I'm not saying you have, but generally, sometimes when there is a conversation like that, people will say, "Oh, you're a killer. You're doing this and you're doing that." And look, they can say that, but if they can say it anyway, I'll wrap this up. So basically, going to his points, clearly, when we look at Europe, those graphs clearly show in every country with in temperate climates that there was a wave, that it's basically a seasonal virus, regardless of when they do the lockdowns, how they do the lockdowns, whatever measures, because there's no way that all the countries acted in lockstep with each other. We saw it rise in summer and drop in winter, rise in summer, drop in winter. Now, obviously, vaccines are going to help a lot with that, but I just hope they don't go onto this variant thing. I hope they don't take away freedoms. If they do use lockdown, it should only be as a last resort for high risk scenarios for high risk people. And this is the problem. There's been more lockdowns in parts of Australia. Half the time has been in lockdowns. To me, that is not a last resort. That is almost like a first resort. And lots of businesses are closing. There's lots of mental health issues. Entire industries are dying. The economy is totally ruined, which in the long run will affect health. So the benefits are definitely not worth the costs of lockdowns and other measures. That's it. That's my conclusion. So,
Thank you very much, guys. Both, just thank you both for coming along. It's been, like I say, very respectful. So yeah, can't thank you both enough for that. I think it's been quite a nice. I've just really enjoyed like sitting here Sunday afternoon, chilling out and listening to you two. So thank you for making my job very easy. I didn't have to really do anything. I just kind of listened. So thank you very, very much. There was kind of one question I sort of mentioned if anyone had any questions, but I think it's been answered by now. It was from Super Ghost UK, because they missed some of the stream saying like, do you believe COVID is a hoax? But quite obviously you don't. So that's already been answered. There was another one. How much is Murdoch paying you, BB?
So yeah, I'm left. I'm not left wing. I'm more of a centrist. I think right wingers. Sorry, there was a time delay. If I interrupted you there, STST.
That's okay. No, you
didn't. Did you hear that?
Yep.
I'm a centrist. I'm not right wing. I'm not conservative. They have just as many ludicrous scientific arguments as the left do.
We've got one from Q.
Sorry, that wasn't an ad hominem. That I'm talking about extremes, not Bullet Bill or normal people. I'm talking about extremists. You know, on both sides.
Yeah, I've got another question from Dr. Peel. Ask. I assume it's UBB, but Bullet Bill as well, maybe. How QAnon is now?
I don't know what that is, so I've heard of it, but I have no idea what it is.
I think I'm going to kind of say I think that it seems like kind of a trolly question. I think they're implying that you're into that conspiracy, BB, and I don't think you are. QAnon is a quite extreme conspiracy in America where they think that Trump's controlling Trump's controlling the military and all that sort of jazz.
Can I make a statement? I don't know if you have enough time. Can I make a statement about conspiracies?
Yeah, go for it, mate. I mean, I'm not in any major rush. I'm going to end it in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. I'll try and be quick about it.
Go for it.
Okay. I hear a lot about that in debate. In terms of big pharma, this is where the vaccines come in and a lot of the measures. The big pharma does push governments and it's more outwardly, maybe there's some closed behind the door deals going on. They do push the vaccines out quite a bit because it's a good source of money. Imagine making a vaccine compulsory. Imagine your product was compulsory. It would be a very good business. So it's not a conspiracy. Big oil does it, big finance does it, big companies do it all the time. They even have actual offices in the White House and in government offices to lobby what they ask for. And believe me, Big Pharma is very much into this and very much pushing the panic and the fear and a lot of what has been happening.
Cool. Question from Deadly Dave. Again, any question I ask, you haven't got to answer it at all, but if you don't mind, genuine question that I don't want to sound mean, but is genuine. Does BB understand how evidence works and what constitutes evidence?
Well, evidence in terms of a pandemic that has only a respiratory virus that has only been going on for a year, there's still a lot of evidence that needs to come in. We have no conclusions. A lot of people say Asia has done really well, and now the infections have gone up in Asia. So we are so far away from a conclusion that even with Sweden or Europe, we are still way too far ahead of a conclusion for evidence. Now, vaccines take 5 to 10 years to develop. Most of the approvals are under emergency powers for the vaccines. So I'm not against. Yeah.
If I could step in briefly,
Yes.
I think what that question was in what Dave is talking about there is that when you're talking about evidence, that a lot of the evidence that you showed were opinions or things that people have said or written about.
Okay, sure, yeah.
So
and so were yours. Yours were these measures were on March the 3rd, and the cases went down. And guess what? It was summer, so
my arguments were not opinion based. They were. So I showed you the date of the lockdown and I showed you the effect on the cases. So if you're going to provide evidence that is just opinions and things that people have said, then that's very, very poor evidence. Because I could provide a quote from people saying, "Oh, coronavirus is a hoax," and say, "Well, there you go. There's my evidence."
Well, that's what I have provided evidence of increased cancers. I've provided evidence. I provided a whole range of evidence: increased deaths from the lockdowns, interrupting supply chains, lockdowns causing more harm than good, mental health, physical health. I've provided quite a lot of evidence, which we are still in very early stages of that. So again, there is no solid evidence yet, but the indicators are looking at pretty bad at the measures of what we are applying in terms of the effects on our society.
Just clarifying, we're just clarifying your understanding of what constitutes good and bad evidence, basically.
Well, that's pretty. Well, look, I can admit that there's no black and white evidence on something like a lockdown. I cannot tell you, we will have 0.2 impact of mental health. But I can tell you it will be quite significant. Lockdowns will have a significant impact. I can't tell you. It's almost like a social science. It's like looking at economics. This will cause growth, or this will... It's not a exact mathematical formula, like say when you debate flat Earth, and you can prove easily that the Earth isn't flat because you do these measurements and it's dropped by point.
Yeah, okay, but even
whatever.
Yes, but the thing
I'm
is,
talking
even
about
with
a cost-benefit analysis. One person could say it's worth it, and another person could say it's absolute rubbish. It's not.
I agree. But even things there are a lot of things in science that are very much not black and white, but you can still use evidence to build up your case. I mean, you won't have a definite yes or no answer. Let's take the weather, for example. I mean, predicting the weather is very, very difficult. There's so many variables you have to take into account.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that you can't use evidence. You could still use evidence of what scientists have done to build up your case and say, right, I think that it's likely that it will be sunny, for example.
Exactly. So to continue from that, my projection is that it is very bleak for a lot of people. These measures are very bleak. I cannot give you a number on that. I gave you cancer figures, but how can I tell you who's going to die from cancer and who isn't? I can tell you it's going to be a significant effect, because lockdowns means you won't visit to the doctor. And then we're not talking just cancer. We're talking a lot of health effects. This isn't black and white, but you can see significant effects here. This happens in, look, my background, I came from social sciences. So there's no right and wrong answer. It's just when you think critically, you can go one area and then you can come back. And just want to say to that, I do respect USTST for where you have gone. In terms of flat earthers, many people call them stupid. I'm going off on a tangent here. I actually find them curious and quite, not all of them, but many are curious and quite curious about the world. You may have lay people off the street who do. I'm going off on a tangent, sorry, but I just want to say that.
No, I mean, like, kind of, the debate officially is over now, mate. You know, so we can.
There's a few questions that pop up. So shall we maybe see if we can get?
Yeah, I've had one. There's a good one from Super Ghost UK. No, well, sorry to cut BB off there, because I know you're actually, you know, saying, you know, great stuff. Thanks for that shout out, dude. Like, so this is a really good question, actually, though, I think. Bullet Bill, if you were Prime Minister, how would you have handled the pandemic without knowing what we know about the virus, etc.?
Well,
that is a good question. I mean, essentially, I don't know. It's with the caveat of not knowing about, you know, so not having hindsight, which I recognize that that's one of the conditions of the question. I honestly don't know. I would hope that I would have brought lockdown measures in sooner. But having said that, this is the thing with the response, the UK's response to the pandemic. It was inadequate, and I think we could have done much better. And I think that I think the advice was there as well. The advice was there, and the science was there. Limited as it was, that there was enough there to start putting in some kind of measures. However, it's very easy to forget how difficult these decisions are, because as we've discussed today, lockdowns are very effective at bringing down the number of cases and deaths, but they're not a decision that should be taken lightly. You know, so I think these are very difficult decisions to be made. I would hope that I would have brought in lockdown measures sooner. But like I said, I don't really know. And that's a very, very difficult position to be in, to be making those kind of good decisions. And I'm not going to be arrogant and claim that I would have, you know, I would have done perfectly and there've been, you know, far fewer deaths, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I can only speculate.
Can I just say, Bullet Bill, I actually agree with you on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you know, I actually agree with you. If what they needed to do at the very start is do an early lockdown with international coordination, so it didn't even leave China, but there's geopolitical consideration that China wasn't entirely honest with the rest of the world. So I'm not attacking China on this, but definitely international coordination wasn't there, and now we're left with this mess. So
the UK, I mean, it's the UK's response to the virus is so bad that it's pretty, you know, there's not really much of a case for arguing against it. It was quite dire, but yeah. Anyway.
Well, there's something we agree on, but
Yeah, at least, well, we're finishing strong. We're finishing a little bit better, at least. So
yeah, finishing on that positive note.
yeah.
Well, it's not a positive note, really, is it? But
well, there'll be thousands of
again,
cancer deaths. There'll be lots of health issues. There'll be economic losses. But anyway,
It's a bit of a downer to the stream.
yeah, mate, you just ruined it. You just bloody ruined it, BB.
All right, okay.
I'm
So
only
you want to conclude now?
I'm only joking. No, I mean, everyone's been affected, obviously, personally by it, haven't they? I suppose, and it is. But like someone would say, I suppose my end conclusion would be like, I'd always look at, say, especially with businesses, because I lost a lot of work, and kind of couldn't afford to live where I lived anymore. So I had to, move to a smaller place. But I personally don't know anyone that kind of died of COVID. So I think, like, in the whole, I'd rather have what happened to me than maybe lose a member of my family, if you know what I mean. So, and I know, I'm not, I agree completely that it's been bloody hard, and but there's so many things we're not in control of. And kind of people are trying their best, I suppose. But yeah, UK, just wish we acted sooner.
SST. Someone asked. This is completely up to you, and if you said no, that's obviously completely understand. But someone's asking if you want to do an after show or something like that.
Yeah. I can like set up another stream, and then I'll put a link in the top, so then like anyone can just jump on.
Okay.
Cool. Yep, I'll do that. I'll be able to do it for probably. It might only be for about 45 minutes, but yeah, I'll certainly do a little after show. So yeah, but that'll be a completely different stream. So I'll end this one in a second, guys. Yeah, it's been great of both of you. Yeah, BB, even mate, you're welcome to the after show. I'm not gonna, we're not gonna suddenly now do an echo chamber and all snigger at you. You're welcome on as well.
It's a free country. Hey, just tell you one last thing. It's a free country. You can say what you like. That's free.
Yeah. Well, mate, no, you've been actually very, very, very gentlemanly. So thank you very much, both of you. I'm going to end this, and then we'll jump on the after show.
Thanks
very much, guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to run for a little wee and see you all in a bit.
Thank you.